to our session for today. It's fantastic to see so many of you here joining us, and thank you for being part of the Nottingham Tech for Good Festival. It's a grassroots initiative that started just as an idea last October, and we're really excited to have you with us today. My name's Laura Musgrave, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. Please do put your questions in the Q&A tab as we go through, and we'll pick them up towards the end of the session with our fantastic speaker, who I'll be telling you a little bit more about in just a moment. From here then, a little bit about the Nottingham Tech for Good Festival. What is it all about? It's been a 4-day celebration looking at how technology can be used to shape a fairer, kinder and sustainable future. We've had a whole range of different activities and talks, and there's really been a wonderful selection of different events all the way through, and a massive support to a massive thanks for the incredible support of our local tech, design and innovation community in the East Midlands. It has been a fantastic 4-day celebration of how technology can be used as a positive force. In numbers then, we've had 4 days packed of activities, 20 events and over 600 people registered for the various talks, sessions and activities, and it's been really fantastic. All of these events have been free, and it's just a wonderful thing to see so much collective energy building, so much momentum around the idea of technology and it moving forward in a really positive way. And I know that the team that has put it together has been really excited by all the enthusiasm and all the new ideas, the networks that are being built, and hopefully it all leads to action that will last long after the festival ends too. Okay, so some of the key themes of the festival then reflect some of the challenges and opportunities where technology can make the most meaningful impact. And these themes really matter because they reflect the challenges that we're already facing, whether that's in our work, in our communities, and in the world around us as well. And these have acted as our guideposts for the festival, shaping the events, the discussions, and the workshops throughout the week. But real change doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when people come together. And so community has always been a real key focus for us in the festival, and post-COVID, or in a post-COVID world, we want to help re-energise and reconnect the local design and tech communities in the East Midlands. So community isn't just a theme of the festival, it's really at the heart of it, and we would love you to get involved. So if you haven't already, please do join us. The festival isn't just a collection of events, it's a platform for people who believe technology should be used to make things better. If you care about the impact of what we build on people, communities and the planet, this is your space. Whether you work in tech, design, education, policy or community action, or even if you're just curious about some of the topics we've been exploring this week, and the community is for you, because the future doesn't build itself, people do, and we want you to be a part of that. So please do use the QR code on the screen to scan and join the LinkedIn community, and you can also check out all of the events that have been happening throughout the week on the website as well. So here is the main link to the website if you want to go and find out what has been happening and a little bit more about the festival itself. Brilliant. All right, thank you so much for coming to join us. I'm really excited to introduce our speaker for today, which is Suw Charman-Anderson, and she's going to be talking to us a little bit more about Ada Lovelace and the future of women in tech. So Suw, if I can hand over to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you everyone for coming. I am just going to get my screen shared, so bear with me 1 second. It always takes a little bit of just finagling the tech at the beginning of a talk, but here we go. Right. Thank you very much. So yes, I am Suw Charman-Anderson, and I am the founder of Ada Lovelace Day, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about Ada Lovelace, who she was, her connection to Nottingham, and then we're going to dive into some chat about diversity, equality and inclusion, or DEI, why it's valuable and important for startups and scale-ups to engage with it, And I'm going to give you some concrete tips for how to get started with DEI and how we can make life better for women in tech and make tech more attractive to women. So I'm going to start with Ada Lovelace. Now, you might have heard of her as, or you might know her as the first computer programmer. But, you know, to many, she's just the daughter of a famous poet. She was born on the 10th of December in 1815, and she was born as Augusta Ada Byron, the daughter of George Gordon, who you probably know as Lord Byron, the famous, possibly the first famous poet. Her mother was Anne Isabella Milbank, Baroness Wentworth, who was known as Annabella. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background because this is going to be relevant later on, but Byron and Annabella married in 1815 at a private ceremony at Annabella's family home. Byron was a reluctant groom, and it is said that he was several days late to his own wedding. The marriage was short and unhappy. Byron drank, took laudanum, he was cruel and manipulative. And when Lady Caroline Lamb, who was Annabella's cousin and one of Byron's flings, described him as mad, bad and dangerous to know, it really wasn't a joke. So to escape her abusive marriage, Annabella went to live with her parents, taking 1-month-old Ada with her. Byron, who'd fled the country to escape various scandals, including an incestuous relationship with his half-sister, died when Ada was 9, so they had no relationship at all. But as a child, Ada was fascinated by diagrams of new inventions, and she would read periodicals and just was really captivated by machines. By the age of 12, she developed a design for a steam-powered flying machine, 14 years before William Henson came up with his aerial steam carriage. But Annabella was concerned that Ada might inherit some of Byron's poetic tendencies, so she had her schooled in maths and science to try and combat any madness inherited from her father. Now, one of Lovelace's most important friends and teachers was Mary Somerville, who was a mathematician and an astronomer. Now, Somerville translated the 5-volume Mécanique Céleste by Pierre-Simon Laplace, and herself became famous when it was published in 1831 as The Mechanism of the Heavens. Now, on the 5th of June, 1833, when Ada was just 17, she accompanied her mother to a party at the house of inventor Charles Babbage. And there, Somerville introduced Ada to Charles, and both of their lives changed. So Babbage was a mathematician, inventor, mechanical engineer, and a campaigner against street musicians. When he was at school, he studied maths for navigation and accounting. So he knew that incorrect calculations in navigation not only could, but did cause shipwrecks. And what he wanted to do was build a machine that would accurately calculate and print mathematical and astronomical tables that were completely free from errors. So at that time, those tables were usually worked out by hand by people who were known as computers, i.e. people who compute. And obviously, people make mistakes. Now, if these tables were worked out by his machine, they would be perfect and lives would be saved. So Babbage started work on a device he called the difference engine. Now, a month after meeting Ada, Charles invited her to a demonstration of his difference engine prototype, and she was fascinated by it. She was hooked. So they became friends. They discussed his work, and including his next and more impressive invention, the analytical engine. So this was a general purpose computing machine. It used loops of punched cards like a Jacquard loom, and it could be programmed via those cards to do complex computations. So it had everything you'd need to make a modern computer. It had an arithmetical unit, it had conditional branching and loops, it had integrated memory, and Babbage even designed a printer for it. It was a much more sophisticated and important machine than the difference engine, but it was never built and he never actually properly finished the designs. So in 1842, Babbage gave a lecture to this guy. This is Italian engineer and mathematician Luigi Menabrea, who was at this lecture at the University of Turin, took notes, wrote it up, published it in French. Charles Wheatstone then asked Lovelace if she would translate Menabrea's paper from French into English, as she was fluent. So in 1842, she started work. Now, because she had been working with Babbage on his designs, talking to him about them, looking at the blueprints, her knowledge of the analytical engine was much deeper than Menabrea's. So she quietly corrected some of his errors as she worked. And when in early 1843 she showed her translation to Babbage, he was delighted, and he encouraged her to add her own notes as she understood the machine so well. So she added some footnotes and tripled the paper's original length. In her expansion of Menabrea's paper, she outlined several early computer programs, including one to calculate Bernoulli numbers, which is known as Note G. And what she did was she described how to break the algebra down into simple formulae that could be calculated using basic mathematical instructions. So addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. She also prepared these instructions for encoding into the punched cards that would have controlled the analytical engine. So there were earlier sketches for programs by Babbage, but Lovelace's were the most elaborate and complete programs written, and they were the first to be published. So it's because of this that Lovelace is often seen as the first computer programmer. But her vision was far bigger than that. She saw that the analytical engine was streets ahead of the earlier, simpler difference engine, and she was very keen to distinguish the two, saying the analytical engine does not occupy ground with mere calculating machines. Because in a major conceptual leap, unparalleled by her peers, she realized that if the analytical engine could manipulate numbers, it could also manipulate symbols, and that this would then open up a huge new area of what she called mathematical science. Now, symbolic logic underpins modern computer programming, but at that time it was an emerging field, and at the forefront was Lovelace's friend and mathematics teacher, Augustus de Morgan. So Lovelace understood that the analytical engine could do more than just calculate big tables of numbers, a lot more. It could potentially make art. The analytical engine, she wrote, weaves algebraic patterns just as the jacquard loom weaves flowers and leaves. It would also be capable of composing music, she said, if only we knew how to break down the science of harmony into the right algorithms. Even now, 180 years later, technology is only just beginning to compose music for itself, by itself. And to me, it's this understanding of the importance of symbolic logic in the creation of a general purpose computer that sets Lovelace apart from the other great minds of her era. No one else was thinking along these lines, and nor would they until the beginning of the modern computer era. So Lovelace continued refining her notes. She worked quite closely with Babbage, often sending letters several times a day, and she often worked 18-hour days. And in August 1843, her paper was published in Taylor's Scientific Memoirs to great acclaim. Menabrea asked Babbage to pass on his congratulations, and Michael Faraday, told Babbage the paper was so complex that it just went over his head. So it's hard to know how Ada would have fulfilled her potential. We know she had an interest in electricity, but she would never get a chance to investigate its properties. She died of cancer in 1852, less than 10 years after the publication of her pioneering paper on the analytical engine. So Lovelace does have some connections to Nottingham, and her main connection is through her father, Byron, whose family home was Newstead Abbey in Hucknall, about half an hour north of central Nottingham. Originally an Augustinian priory, it became a country house during Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. Passed into the Byron family hands in 1540, but its ruination began during the 1700s thanks to the financial mismanagement of William V Baron Byron. By the time that Lord Byron inherited the estate, it was already in a pretty bad way. He lived there periodically from 1808 to 1814, but was forced to sell it in 1818 to pay off his enormous debt, something that Lovelace greatly regretted. She visited Newstead Abbey once in 1850, and although she was proud of the Byron family legacy embodied by Newstead Abbey, she said she felt horribly low and melancholy, as if it ought to belong to me. Lovelace died 2 years after that visit and chose to be buried next to her father in his vault at the Church of St Mary Magdalene in Hucknall. She was 36 years old, the same age Byron was when he died. Ada's second connection to the area, if an hour south is not too far to claim that it's nearby, is that she spent the first 7 years of her life at her grandparents' house in Kirkby Hall, a 17th century manor at Kirkby Mallory, 6 miles from Hinckley. That had been her mother's family estate for 370 years, and Ada was brought up there by her grandmother, Lady Judith. It said that Ada greatly enjoyed visiting Hinckley to the point where her grandmother used it as leverage if young Ada misbehaved. Sadly, Kirkby Hall was torn down in 1952, leaving just a few outbuildings behind, and the land is now the Mallory Park racing circuit. And to celebrate Ada Lovelace Day in 2017, Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council unveiled a blue plaque on the old coach house, one of the few remaining buildings that Lovelace would have recognised. Ada was christened at Kirkby Mallory Parish Church, where after her death, her mother had a memorial built. And it said that the church refused Annabella permission to build the memorial within the churchyard because of Byron's scandalous behaviour. Instead, it is just outside the churchyard boundary in Mallory Meadows. Now, a community group is currently running a campaign to get a statue of Lovelace erected in Hinckley Town Centre outside Hinckley College. They will be casting a new version of this statue by Etienne and Mary Milner, which is based on the portrait by Margaret Sarah Carpenter, and was originally designed to sit atop a modern apartment block in Horseferry Road in London. And if you'd like to know more about the Hinckley statue campaign, then just search for Ada Lovelace in Hinckley on Facebook. Now, as the first computer programmer, Ada Lovelace is the perfect figurehead for a day for women in STEM. And back in 2009, I founded Ada Lovelace Day, which is now celebrated on the second Tuesday of October. But campaigns like mine, which are part of a wider diversity, equality and inclusion or DEI movement, have lost support over recent years. So I want to talk a bit now about why DEI is still important and a few concrete things you can do to help your company begin to think about how it can benefit from a DEI mindset. I don't have time to give you a comprehensive grounding in DEI, but hopefully this will get you started. I think it's easy to think that DEI is something that large businesses do and not something that startups, scale-ups or larger SMEs need to worry about. But if you want your business to excel, then you need to start thinking about DEI sooner rather than later, and for some very good reasons. Firstly, studies consistently show that companies employing more women, especially in leadership roles, are more innovative, particularly technology and manufacturing firms. To quote a 2023 report, you need people with different ideas and different backgrounds coming together to create a kind of environment where extraordinary things happen. Now, every startup and scale up is looking for profitability, and that's another area where research has shown that having more women in senior leadership positions leads to benefits, specifically higher profitability. McKinsey found that companies in the top quartile for gender diversity on executive teams were 25% more likely to have above average profitability than companies in the fourth quartile. And interestingly, the impact of women on profitability has increased from 15% in 2014 to 21% in 2017 to 25% in 2020. And the more women you have, the better your financial performance is likely to be. SMEs are also often looking for talent. So as soon as you start recruiting, DEI becomes important. In March of this year, McKinsey said that the tech talent gap in Europe shows no sign of closing. Only 16% of executives feel they have enough tech talent to meet their needs. 60% said that their company's digital transformation was inhibited by a lack of talent. And while layoffs may have temporarily increased the talent pool, McKinsey says there is no evidence of a systemic narrowing of the gap between supply and demand. Now, as an SME, you're competing with larger companies that can spend more on recruitment. So taking a strong position on DEI can help you stand out to candidates. So a quick look at the law in the UK, although it's important to note that I'm not a lawyer and this is not legal advice. So the main law that relates to DEI right now is the Equalities Act 2010, which aims to ensure fairness in the workplace. It applies to all employers and organisations, and it covers their behaviour towards staff, customers and volunteers. Now, the law aims to prevent direct or indirect discrimination, harassment or victimisation based on 9 protected characteristics, including sex or gender. The Equality and Human Rights Commission is responsible for encouraging equality and diversity, and it has a huge array of resources on its website that you can look at about what the Equalities Act 2010 means in practice. It's also responsible for enforcing the law, just to bear that in mind. As an employer, responsibilities under the Equalities Act include making sure that your recruitment and selection processes are fair, that they don't use discriminatory language or requirements and are based on selecting the objectively best candidate for the job. Ensuring that people get the same pay for the same job, as well as the same benefits and other terms and conditions of employment, regardless of any protected characteristics. Offering the same opportunities for training and development to all employees. Ensuring that promotion processes and criteria are objective and based on merit. And ensuring that dismissal and redundancy processes and decisions are fair. Now, it also says that employers should take steps to promote equality and diversity, such as providing training for your employees, and should have clear policies against discrimination and harassment. Talking of policies, I will come on a bit later to some policies you might want to focus on. Now, upcoming is the Employment Rights Bill, and this is going to make some major changes to UK employment law, improving workers' rights and promoting equality in the workplace. It's currently being reviewed by the House of Lords, so it could well change as it goes through Parliament. And there'll also be a consultation process this year, with the majority of changes not coming in until next year at the earliest. Some changes will apply to all employers. Some will only apply to companies with over 250 employees, and there is a huge amount in it. So I'm only going to focus on the aspects that affect women and parents. So paternity leave and unpaid parental leave is to be made available from first day of employment. There will be new protections against dismissal for pregnant women, mothers on maternity leave and mothers who return to work. It will strengthen existing day one rights to request flexible working by requiring employers to explain the grounds on which they've denied a request and adding a requirement that a rejection of a request be reasonable. Employers must take all reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment, not just by other employees, but also by third parties. And there'll be more protection for whistleblowers by making it explicit that sexual harassment can be the basis for a protected disclosure. And larger employers will be required to produce an equality action plan, setting out how they are addressing the gender pay gap and supporting how they're going to support employees going through menopause. So there is at the moment a lot of analysis and commentary already about what this bill means for employers. Most of that commentary is from law firms. I'm not seeing a huge amount from the tech industry. I'm sure that will change as things get nearer to becoming law, but it's worth being aware of what's coming down the pike towards us. And, it may sound like a lot. It is a lot, especially if you're a small business. But to my mind, this is why it's important to see DEI as a process, not as a goal, and why it's important to share responsibility as widely as possible across the company. DEI is not one big project that you do in one burst of work and then it's done. It's the decisions and actions taken every day that all build up into a fair, welcoming and successful workplace. So embedding DEI into everything everywhere, if not all at once, means that you get the best out of your efforts and you'll build a company and a culture of fairness that sees everyone given the opportunity to excel. So I'm going to run through a few steps, a few things that you can actually do. I'm going to start with a couple of small steps, then we'll go on to a medium and then a large step. But no matter how small these things are or seem to be, they can make a huge difference. They can be very meaningful. So I'm going to start with meetings. It is easy to assume that meetings are just meetings. You just get together and you talk about stuff and that's all they are. But there are ways to improve the way that meetings are run. So a few things to think about. Firstly, are women given room to speak? Are they able to speak up whenever they have something to say, or do they have to force their way in between other people speaking? How can you make sure that women are not interrupted? Again, we have a lot of studies that show that contrary to popular belief, it is men that interrupt women a lot more than women interrupt men. I mean, interruption in general is disrespectful, so be alert to who is interrupting who and make sure that people who are interrupted still get the chance to say their piece. Are people given the chance to properly prepare for a meeting? Making sure people know what a meeting's about and have a chance to think about their contribution beforehand means that people will be more prepared to speak up. It's important as well to draw out shy employees who are often women. Develop a suite of prompt questions such as, what stands out for you? Or is there anything else we should be considering, to encourage quiet attendees to talk? A lot of remote conferencing tools can now tell you who is speaking the most and who is speaking the least, so that you can also use that information to help spot who's being quieter than they should be. When you spot someone who's not speaking up, it may be worth trying to find out why. If they have a confidence issue, can you help with that? Make sure that women's ideas are heard. Again, there is a lot of evidence that women's ideas often aren't taken as seriously and their ideas are more likely to be appropriated by men. If you see this happen, make sure you repeat the woman's idea with credit. And perhaps even invite her to restate it if she's interrupted. And finally, hold meetings during core hours when parents aren't having to go to pick up children. And that makes sure that everybody gets an opportunity to engage. Now, another area that seems maybe a little bit odd to focus on, but I think is very important, is social gatherings and team building events. It's very easy to accidentally exclude people, and a lot of this is accidental. It's not a deliberate action. And we know that bringing people together to have a bit of fun helps create stronger social bonds, helps people get to know each other, and that can really help how people collaborate in the work environment. But it can also be very excluding if the same types of activities favoring the same group of people happen every time. So a few thoughts about how to organise team building and social events at work. One good tip is to ask people what they're interested in doing, but instead of then taking a vote to find out what's most popular, just work your way through as much of the list as you can to make sure that there's variety. If you have games night one month, think about having a crafternoon the next month. Consider how timing can prevent parents, people with long commutes or part-time workers from participating. So if you have drinks at a pub after work, maybe do a lunchtime event next time. If you have remote workers, and lots of companies do, how do they get to be included in these events. So maybe you regularly run online events for the whole company. Also being aware of cliques, how they form and how they can affect how people behave at the office. If the same group is meeting down the pub every week after work, how does that change the power dynamic at work? And again, who is not engaging and why? Do they feel excluded? Does their situation mean they can't take part? Try to find ways to bring them in and make them feel engaged and included. Taking the time to think more deeply about how you foster social connectedness with your staff will pay off in the long run, because people who feel that they belong are more likely to stay with a company for much longer. So, one medium but crucial step. Hiring is one of the most important acts anyone running a business can take. And it is challenging to get it get it right at the best of times. But the language you use in your job ads and the process that you use to hire can have a significant impact on how many women apply. Because your choice of words doesn't just tell applicants what they're expected to do, it also tells them what kind of company you are and even what you would be like to work for. So let's have a quick look at writing job ads. Again, there's a lot more to this, but this is an overview. The first thing that I see people getting wrong is job descriptions. Make sure your job descriptions are sensible. Avoid the laundry list approach. You do not want a long list of 20 things you want people to do. Instead, think about the type of soft skills you're looking for, such as collaborative, can show initiative, good communicator, and only list the truly required hard skills. Check the language of your ad for inclusivity. There are a lot of tools online now that you can run text through and it'll pick up on the unconscious gender bias in your language so that you can make it more attractive to a wider group of people. Generally speaking, you want to avoid gendered words, competitive words, superlatives, or military metaphors, and instead focus more on using cooperative words and share more information about the company, work-life balance, and how you see the role and the company developing in the future. Always include a salary. This should be the default, but it's surprisingly rare. But there are a lot of jobs either where you'll get people applying who are not at the right band, or you'll put people off from applying if they feel like, you know, maybe the job's not going to pay enough, or maybe they think it's too senior for where they're at. So always include a salary. Check where you advertise. If you want more women to apply, think about where are they more likely to see your ads. Can you work with a woman-focused recruitment agency or jobs board? And check your hiring processes to make sure they're fair, that you treat everyone the same way. Gender-balanced interview boards will provide better results than male-only panels, and you need to make sure that you have a standard rubric for assessing interviews that applies to everyone. Finally, a slightly bigger step, but not too big, I hope. I am firmly of the belief that the best way to progress with DEI is to focus on structural changes, creating the right suite of policies, procedures, and standards, and embedding DEI so that it becomes just what we do around here. So I'm going to just list a few policies that you should start with, that you should develop, and explain why they're important to women especially. And again, not a comprehensive list, but a good starting point. Because all of these policies, they don't just support, reassure, and protect the women already in your company, they will make you more attractive to women who are thinking about applying for a job with you. Indeed, Jobs Board Work 180 explicitly assesses and compares employers based on their published HR policies. So flexible and fractional working. Many women need to work part-time or work flexibly, including outside of core hours, or work remotely in order to maintain their career while fulfilling caring responsibilities, not just for children, but increasingly now for elderly relatives. Maternity, paternity, and family care leave. obviously maternity is very important to women, but men should have these options too. So make sure that your paternity leave is as good as your maternity leave. There's an increasing understanding of the impact of menopause on women's lives. It's not just hot flushes. There's a long list of symptoms, and every woman will have a different experience. So if you want to retain more senior women, get them into those leadership roles so that you can be more profitable, then one way to help is to develop a menopause policy. And again, there's a whole other talk about why women leave tech roles mid-career, and they leave in a way higher percentage than men. And part of this is about they just aren't given the same professional development opportunities. So a training policy that ensures everyone gets the same chance to learn new skills is super important. Another reason women leave tech is that they feel unfairly passed over for promotion. So again, how does your promotion process work? What are your criteria? They need to be clear, and they need to be used impartially to decide who gets promotion. And finally, it's absolutely essential to have good policies about dealing with bullying, discrimination, and grievances. I mean, these really are fundamental, and they must be fair and they must be applied consistently. Now, there's a lot more I could talk about, but we don't have that long. So it's important to remember that small changes have big impacts. It's not just about supporting women. For example, fractional and flexible working is also great for disabled people. Paternity leaves benefit men and women. They give fathers the time they need to bond with their babies. And fairness in recruitment, well, that benefits literally everyone. So when you're communicating to your colleagues, make sure you emphasize that this is a journey and that this work makes things better for everyone. So finally, although I'm no longer able to run Ada Lovelace Day due to a lack of funding, that doesn't mean you can't organise your own event. 14th of October this year, so find a way to mark the occasion, tell your friends and colleagues, and join us on social media. You can find us at these links, which we will share in a clickable form in the chat. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks to everyone who has been supporting Ada Lovelace Day on our GoFundMe, without whom I would not have been able to prepare this talk for you. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sue. It was absolutely fascinating to find out more about Ada Lovelace's life. And then also, thank you so much for sharing some of those practical tips that we can all take away as well to help support the present and indeed the future of women in tech. So that was brilliant. We've got a few minutes now for questions. So if you do have a question for Sue, please pop it in the Q&A and we will go through those. I have also posted the links in the Q&A as well. So if you do want to check any of those out and follow up after today's session, please do. I'm wondering, Sue, first of all, if we think about sort of the next generation, how do we inspire young girls to become interested in STEM?
This is a large part of what Ada Lovelace Day has always been about, and it's really about role models. So we know that young girls, so up until sort of like the age of about 10, 11, 12, they're sort of still forming their self-identity. And because they don't see very many women in tech and in leadership roles in tech, they tend to start to assume that tech is not for them. So by sort of 10, 11, 12, they've already self-selected out of tech. So I think there's a lot to be done with younger children around showing them, you know, hey, here are some amazing women that have done some amazing things, you know, not just in tech, but in STEM in general. And then as they kind of go through puberty, a lot of peer pressure comes in from other girls and boys at school who will be kind of giving them the message that, you know, STEM is not for them. And there's an awful lot of messaging just in the wider world. We just live in this kind of sexist soup. So it takes quite a lot to counteract that with girls. Getting them interested in hobbies, including them, you know, if you have a technical hobby, include them in that. I remember my dad was an electrical engineer and he taught me how to solder. And I remember that one of my very first jobs when I was 18, someone said, oh, can you fix you know this sort of thing, can you fix the stereo, it doesn't work anymore. and it had just a little bit just needed soldering together. And it was just like, seriously, anyone can do this. But I, as a woman, was the person that did it, much to the shock of pretty much all the men in the office. So giving girls these kind of skills and just normalizing it is super important.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It's so crucial that, you know, young girls do see that as an option for themselves, and that, as you say, they've got examples and have access to learn some of these skills as well,
Yeah.
that they're not discouraged if they do show interest. So yeah, thank you for that. I want to ask also, you'd mentioned about sort of like social events and team building. Why would you say it's important to think harder about things like those as well?
So actually, with this issue around team building and social events is a broader issue than DEI. This actually kind of plugs into democracy, like literally. So there's this guy called Robert Putnam in the States who's been studying kind of like what helps countries be more or less democratic. And one of the things that comes up is around social capital. So we know like social capital is kind of like how much influence and how many connections do you have with people around you. And there are two types of social capital. There's bonding capital, which is where you build relationships with people who are like you. And then there's bridging capital, which is where you build social relationships with people who are not like you. And what we are sort of seeing in the broader world is more bonding capital developing and less bridging capital. Now, if you want to build a strong workforce, so one that is good at collaborating, is good at communicating, then you need to have some level of social bonds between people. If your company only has bonding social capital, if everybody is the same and all the people who are most the same socialize together, then that becomes quite exclusive. And that's when problems start. That's when, if a woman feels harassed, it's not taken seriously by her manager because she is outside of their sort of like bonded group, and so is taken less seriously. And that is then when company culture becomes corrosive. And that affects how well a company works, because we know that innovation really requires a mix of experiences and ideas. And if you only have like-minded people working on a project, they are going to come up with the same kinds of ideas and they're going to reinforce them with one another. So what you want to do is really focus on bridging social capital. So bringing in people who are different, making sure that people who are different feel included, feel like they belong. That will make your company structure stronger. It will make your problem solving better. It will improve communication. And also, it literally it has a wider impact outside of your company. So it will literally help to make people sort of more bonded, have more bridging capital in their wider lives as well. Because if you're bringing people in who are different, then you're also breaking down stereotypes and you are helping people understand that, okay, I disagree with this person on this subject, but actually I really like them and we work together really well. So actually that doesn't really matter. And I think our society needs a lot more of that right now.
Yeah, no, that's so important for us to think about, and especially as you say, in those sort of two different ways as well, the bonding and then also the building of bridges too. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's fantastic. I just want to touch on a comment that Kate has left there. She doesn't have a question, but she just says, thank you, Sue, that was amazing. And there's some lovely reactions there. So yeah, to echo Kate, a massive thank you for coming to join us, Sue. It's been a brilliant session, and I know everyone will be taking away lots of information. I just want to add a reminder that the links are also in the Q&A if you want to go and follow up on anything to do with Ada Lovelace Day, or if you want to connect with Sue and follow any of the information on the Ada Lovelace Day activities. And yeah, thank you so much, Sue. It's been a fantastic session, and thanks for joining us.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And if anyone wants to connect with me directly, I'm just Sue on Blue Sky. So I'm pretty easy to find. I'm generally the only human SUW around.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.